I knew that I wasn't going to leave this organization as long as I had any doubt that it might be the truth. I never wanted to be plagued with that. So that's why I took so long. It took me 3 years to struggle my way out. I had to get into psychotherapy to learn how to think independently, because they make you so dependent on them and they just control your mind. And that was very difficult. But once I amassed all this knowledge, I just thought, well, what I did is, as I was examining each of the doctrines, and I had the whole library of Jehovah's Witness material, and I would find doctrines that are conflicting, or they change their doctrines. They go from point A to B, back to A, back to B, over to C, back to A, you know, and they claim it's all truth. And I thought, this is nonsense. So I'm making Xerox copies of all this and keeping it in notebooks. And by the time I had 5 of these really thick notebooks, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, what are you waiting for? You know, I mean, it was still difficult, but I felt when I dropped the letter into the mailbox of the elders, I felt triumphant, and I never did have that regret or that fear. And I still feel a connection to God. I mean, I never felt a connection to Jehovah. As a Jehovah's Witness, I felt closer to God as a Methodist growing up as a little girl than I ever felt to Jehovah in a Kingdom Hall. It was like, you know, their relationship is with the organization and not really with God. So now I feel like, well, that's out of the way, and I can attempt to have that relationship again. Yeah. No, what was funny is that an elder came calling at my door in the door-to-door work. And he didn't know it was me who lived there. And so I let him give his little spiel, and I said, I know who you are, because I was one of you for 25 years. Hold on, let me get my...
Did he take it?
No, he stood there, and he turned white as a sheet, and he started shaking really bad. And he goes, and he starts backing up from me, and he can't have eye contact any longer. That's one of the forbidden things, to have eye contact with anybody who ever leaves. So he diverted his eyes, and he's shaking white as a ghost, and he goes, we're just gonna let you be. And they never came back. I'm in a little gated community, you know, and they never came back. Oh, really? It was really scary for me, because I did 45 radio interviews, and some of these were in foreign countries too. You know, it big all over. And it was so scary thinking that thousands of people might be listening to this. And what are they going to tear me apart? And so I really got frightened when the host for the show, he said, Diane, we have a J.W. Elder online, and he wants to talk to you. And I'm just like, oh no, I want to just melt. And he got on there and he said, you go, girl. And I've gotten 5 hate mails through my publisher. They send me letters, you know, that they forward it to me. And it's just the big diatribe of the way they're defending their religion, you know, like I used to do when I was a witness. So I just got rid of those. But mostly, I mean, the mail has been overwhelmingly, thank you. You know, there's really been very little. I'm really kind of surprised. It's the governing organization that makes all the rules for Jehovah's Witnesses to follow. And they have a headquarters back there in Brooklyn, New York. And they claim, you know, the governing body is made up of between 11 and 17 men, depends if one dies and they get another one in or whatever. And that's the little nucleus that makes all the rules for the witnesses. They print all the publications back there in that factory. And it was really a shocking thing when I went to visit and tour that factory, which the public can do. And I was so surprised to see how these people, they're like slaves. I mean, the living conditions there are horrible, way, way over 100 degrees, and they're working with hot ink is boiling and things like that. And this, you'd go to different departments, you know, where the bookbinding is or the ink or whatever. And so here, this one department, here comes this witness guy, and he's all happy and everything. And he introduces himself to the group, and he says, "Hi, as you will notice, I am completely hairless." And he had developed this condition of alopecia where you lose every hair, your eyebrows, your eyelashes, everything. You're completely bald, your body over. And he's telling us all about this. And he says, I wasn't like this before I came here. And we went there because there was 2 young men in my congregation who left to go work there. So we're going to go visit them and have lunch with them. And it was so shocking to see that, okay, there's all these tables and we're sitting at this table. And here comes this gong. And all comes in the guys and they're marching like that. And they sit down at the table and they eat really, really fast. And they don't get much food. It's like you have sliced ham and there's one little slice for each person. So you can eat that and then you send one guy back to the window to get more. And as fast as that guy can run, that's how much you get to eat. But that's only a real short time, like less than 15 minutes. And then the gong happened. And I'm thinking, these guys, we came here to visit them and they're not even chatting. Well, they're starving. And, they're just eating as fast as they can. Gong. And there they go. Back to work. It was very shocking to see that. Yeah, so that's the Watchtower organization. What they say, they make their own rules. The rules in California are not good enough. In California, all a woman has to do is say no. And a man keeps going and he's raped her. But it's different when you're a Jehovah's Witness. The rapist, if you're attacked, he can have a gun to your head. He could have a knife right at your throat. And if you don't scream because you think he'll kill you, you're having willful sex. And they'll disfellowship you, throw you out. You'll lose your friends and family. God will kill you eventually. It is so damaging to say that. If a woman is just too petrified to scream, or she decides that I'm not going to take the chance. I think he's going to kill me if I make a noise, so I'll just play dead or something. And they have changed that doctrine. During the 25 years that I was a witness, they changed it from, if you don't scream, it's fornication, to what it really is rape no matter what. But they never stayed here very long. 13 times. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But most of the time here, over here, just very briefly. And finally, I thought one time they finally gotten it right, and then they changed it back. And on that day, I disassociated. The day I got that Awake magazine, I thought they've done it again, and that just so infuriated me. Yeah, it is so hurtful. That doctrine, it's like a woman gets raped, and that's bad enough. And then you think, God doesn't understand this? He didn't understand that I was too frightened, that I couldn't scream? He doesn't. What kind of God is that? And start making me, really angry at God. So it's a very hurtful thing. And I just felt they need to be exposed. Well, they claim, this governing body claims that when they meet in this little group, that God somehow feeds information into their mind, this new light. And they dispense it through their Awake and Watchtower magazines. So, if the Watchtower Society, it's really the Watchtower Society is changing its mind, but because they say we're the mouthpiece for God, it looks like God's changing his mind. And, I can't imagine he's very happy about that reputation. And I would probably talk to them about this new light theory, that Jehovah shines new light on these doctrines. And just very briefly, just tell them, try to reason them, reach them that way. If a doctrine is here on point A, and that's the truth, which you believe, the witnesses believe it's truth, and then it changes to point B, that's truth. Well, what's that? Well, then now that is falsehood. And so how can there be any light at all in any of their doctrine? At the time I wrote my book, I had a lot of anger, especially the poems that I wrote about rape and spiritual rape are filled with anger. And in fact, it had been a couple of years since I hadn't read it. And I read it, and it really hit me, So I'm in a different place now, but not entirely, because when I think about these things, like when I hear of someone who's been hurt, or I'm talking about it here now, I feel emotion about that, But it doesn't consume me. I think that anger is a very negative emotion, and it eats up the person who's angry, and it's not doing a thing to the Watchtower. So I channeled my anger into writing this book so that it could be out there and the truth could be known to people. And that was my vehicle kind of for relieving a lot of that anger. Once it was published and out there, a lot of that anger went away. But I still have not gotten to the point of forgiving the Watchtower Society. Someone asked me that. And I said, well, in order for God to forgive somebody, they have to be repentant. And they have to stop doing it, whatever they're doing. But the Watchtower is not repentant. They're not sorry. They don't apologize. And they keep hurting people. So I don't really feel that I have to go that far. But I met Ray France one time. Maybe some of you have heard of him. He was a member of the governing body. And he left it voluntarily, and he wrote a book called Crisis of Conscience. And he reveals in that something that nobody else could ever do, unless you're one of those people, the inner workings of what really goes on there. And I had the honor to meet him one time. He was visiting near where I lived with a group of friends, and somebody got me invited. And I wanted to see how he handled his anger, because he was like, his whole life? He was in his 70s, and his whole life was dedicated to the Watchtower, serving in all the capacities of the hierarchy, and then finally in the governing body. And I got to talk to him, and he was not angry at all. I was so astonished at what a kind and loving man that he is. And I got to talk to him and say, wow, why is it, what do you do with your anger? Why aren't you feeling angry that they took your life? And he said, my dear, if I give them one more minute by being angry, I'm still giving my life to them. They're not going to get one more minute of my life. And so he wrote his books, 2 of them, same type of, it was a very healing thing. And you just kind of get your anger out there. And so that's kind of how I feel about it.